The waves of Coronado swallowed her scream, but the scars on her arm told the real story. Ensign Clara Vance, the first woman to attempt BUDS, was a target, for the waves, for the instructors, and especially for her peers. "Look at Vance! She's damaged goods!" they sneered, pointing at the ragged lines across her shoulder. Little did they know. Those weren't scars of failure. They were the roadmap to a classified operation so dark the Pentagon wanted it erased. When a 4-star general showed up and spoke just 3 words, "Black Ops Survivor," the mockery stopped, and a legend was born. The sands of Coronado felt less like a beach and more like a surgical table under the 0500 moon. They were the proving ground for Navy SEALs, a place that breaks bodies and tempers souls, and Ensign Clara Vance knew its reputation better than anyone. She was Class 342, the first woman ever to be formally allowed into the basic underwater demolition SEAL BUD-S training, and she was hated for it. The hate wasn't just for the gender barrier she shattered, it was personal. Clara was a ghost in uniform. She was slight, all muscle and sinew, and her face was perpetually set in an expression of distant focus that the instructors mistook for arrogance. Her eyes, an unsettling shade of deep grey, rarely blinked, but the primary focus of the hostility was her left shoulder. It was a topographical map of trauma, a network of pale, raised scars that ran from her deltoid across her clavicle and disappeared under her collarbone. They were deep, puckered wounds that looked less like surgical repairs and more like something had tried to tear her apart and failed. The chief culprit in the mockery was a man built like a granite statue, Petty Officer First Class Ryan Brick O'Connell. He was a veteran of 2 deployments, a natural leader, and deeply resentful of Clara's presence. "Vance!" Brick's voice would boom during the log carry, louder than the surf. "Pick up your weight, or are those battle wounds acting up again?" He'd use the words, "battle wounds," with the dripping sarcasm of a man who thought she'd gotten them tripping over a curb. Another trainee, Ensign Marcus Mac Allen, usually followed O'Connell's lead, but with a less aggressive, more pitying tone. "Come on, Vance. If you can't keep pace with a little scratch, how are you going to haul out a man under fire? We need operators, not patients." Clara never responded. She didn't flinch. She just locked her eyes on the horizon, focused on the pain, and pushed harder. Her silence only fueled their suspicion that she was a publicity stunt, a wounded bird allowed in for political reasons. The instructors were worse. Chief Petty Officer Samuel Hammer Jensen, a man with the voice of gravel and the patience of a sniper, targeted her constantly. "Vance, when I tell you to get wet, you get wet. You're moving like you've got a fear of water. What happened? Did your little sailing boat capsize?" Jensen taunted during a miserable, freezing surf immersion session. Clara stood at attention, salt water streaming from her hair, her lips blue, but her eyes steady. "No, Chief. Instructor." "No, Chief. Instructor what?" "No, Chief Instructor. My movements are precise and I am following all procedures," she replied, her voice a low rasp. The truth was, Clara was outperforming the majority of the class on everything that wasn't a show of brute, unthinking strength. Her swim times were stellar, fluid, effortless, almost inhumanly efficient. Her problem-solving skills in the field exercises were clinical, innovative, and brutally effective. Her composure under duress was legendary. During a stress test, where instructors blared loud music and fired blanks over their heads for 48 hours, she was the only one who didn't show a visible twitch. But the physical evidence of her trauma kept her an outsider. One afternoon, during a mandatory medical checkup, O'Connell and Allen were lined up behind her, watching as the Navy medic examined her torso. The medic, A kind-faced woman, named Lieutenant Commander Sarah Chen, touched the scar tissue gently. "It's incredible that you have this much range of motion," Dr. Chen murmured to Clara. "The internal damage must have been severe." O'Connell leaned in, just loud enough for Clara to hear. "She probably fell off her peloton, Doc. Don't worry about it." McAllen snickered. Clara finally turned, her grey eyes fixing on O'Connell. Her expression was devoid of anger, which made it more chilling. "O'Connell," she said, her voice completely flat. "Focus on your breathing. Your heart rate is 110 beats per minute. You're hyper-aroused. You will fail the underwater knot-tying exercise later if you don't control it." O'Connell's face flushed red. He was caught. His heart was racing from the exertion, but also from the sheer testosterone of his self-imposed rivalry. "Shut up, Vance. You don't know what you're talking about." "I know what I'm looking at," Clara stated simply, then turned her back to him. She wasn't just looking at him. She was assessing him. It was the detached, almost mechanical observation of a machine calculating a threat vector. The scorn for Clara reached its zenith on the night before Hell Week. The class was gathered for a final briefing, their faces weary and caked with mud. Chief Jensen was giving his typical pre-mortem speech about how most of them wouldn't make it. O'Connell, still smarting from the earlier confrontation, decided on one last, low-blow insult. He made sure the entire platoon was listening. "Hey, Vance," he called out, wiping the mud from his face. "Just wondering, when you quit tomorrow, are you going to send us a postcard from the infirmary? Or does your insurance only cover paper cuts?" He jabbed a thumb at her shoulder. The platoon laughed, a tired, cruel sound. Clara looked at him, and for the first time, a shadow of something deeper crossed her face. It wasn't pain. It was a cold, absolute certainty. "O'Connell," she said, her voice clear despite her exhaustion. "The only place I'm going is through the finish line. And when I get there, you'll be on your knees, praying for an excuse to quit that's half as honorable as what put these on me." She tapped the puckered tissue on her shoulder with a fingertip. The laughter died. The air went silent. The confidence in her voice was absolute. But no one believed her. They all knew Hell Week was the ultimate equalizer. It would expose the weakness behind her scars. Hell Week began not with a bang, but with a freezing, 4-day deluge of relentless punishment. Sleep deprivation turned the world into a hallucination. The constant cold became a dull, grinding ache in the bones. The physical training was no longer about conditioning. It was about stripping away the veneer of civilization and finding the bare, animal will to survive. O'Connell and Allen, who had been vocal critics of Clara, were both suffering intensely. O'Connell's size became a liability. The cold burrowed into his mass, leaving him shivering uncontrollably, his muscles seizing up. Allen was struggling with the mental torture, weeping silently into his log during a 4-hour remedial surf passage. Clara, however, was in her element. While others groaned and stumbled, Clara moved with an eerie, steady rhythm. The lack of sleep seemed to focus her, making her movements economical and precise. She was a silent, uncomplaining engine. During a night mission to traverse a 5-mile obstacle course in complete darkness, the platoon was given a near-impossible task: carry a 250-pound rubber Zodiac boat, navigate the course, and retrieve a specific flag marked only by a faint, timed strobe light in the distance. The instructors had deliberately swapped maps and provided faulty compasses. Chaos erupted. "We're lost! We need to turn back!" O'Connell yelled, his voice ragged with exhaustion, slamming his fist on the Zodiac. "This is impossible! Chief Jensen is messing with us!" McAllen whined, dropping his end of the boat. Clara didn't say a word. She moved away from the group and disappeared into the brush for 30 seconds. When she returned, she pointed to a high, nearly invisible ridgeline. "We navigate by celestial bearing," she stated, her breath misting in the cold air. "The Great Bear's alignment relative to that ridge is constant. We move 10 paces, turn 5 degrees north-northeast, then use the ground slope to find the creek bed. I smelled the brackish water. It leads to the flag's location." O'Connell stared at her. "You smelled it? Vance, you're hallucinating. We're using the compass." "The compass is off by 15 degrees west. It's magnetized from the proximity to the radio wire earlier," Clara countered instantly. Chief Jensen's radio operator, Petty Officer Thompson, dropped his rig right next to the compass pile before the briefing. "His battery pack is unshielded. My route is faster, and it's the only way to make the 5-minute time limit." She didn't wait for permission. She grabbed her end of the boat, hoisted it onto her shoulder, the scarred shoulder, and started walking. O'Connell, completely defeated by his own panic and exhaustion, could only follow. They completed the exercise with 47 seconds to spare, the only team to succeed. Chief Jensen, normally a fountain of scorn, could only nod in gruff acknowledgement. But the most telling moment came during the long-distance cold-water swim. The trainees had to swim 2 miles out to a buoy in the frigid Pacific, signal, and swim back. Halfway through the return, McAllen began to seize up, his hypothermia pushing him toward panic and drowning. O'Connell was closest to him, but was too spent to help. He thrashed, trying to grab Allen, but his arms were heavy logs. Suddenly, Clara was there. She didn't hesitate. She grabbed Allen, not in a panic-induced grapple, but in a swift, practiced combat tow. But as she did, Allen instinctively clawed at the arm that held him, reopening an old wound across her forearm, a scar less noticeable than the one on her shoulder, but still present. Blood bloomed instantly in the cold water, dissolving into the Pacific. Clara didn't even gasp. The pain was apparently irrelevant. She simply adjusted her grip, secured Allen's head above the waves, and began kicking with a relentless, powerful scissor kick. She towed the nearly unconscious man for almost a mile, reaching the shore minutes before the safety boat could intercept. As she dragged Allen onto the sand, her face was white with cold, her lips blue, but her breathing was calm. Chief Jensen and the Navy corpsman rushed over. "Vance, your arm!" Jensen barked, seeing the stream of fresh blood. Clara glanced down at the reopened, bleeding scar. "It's fine, Chief. Just a scrape." Jensen frowned, looking closer at the wound. It was not a scrape. It was a jagged, older scar that looked like it was caused by shrapnel, now torn open. "Get her to the medical tent, Corpsman," Jensen commanded. As they took her away, O'Connell stumbled over to the patch of sand where Clara had been. He looked at McAllen, who was being wrapped in emergency blankets. Then he looked at the blood staining the sand. The sight of her steady, almost non-reaction to what must have been agonizing pain finally broke through his cynicism. Later that evening, in a small, cramped debriefing room, Chief Jensen was reviewing Clara's medical file, noting the required entry about the reopened wound. He saw the code on her record, "Do not discuss." Code: Sierra 9. He was about to close the file when a secured, encrypted message came through the Navy's classified network. It was a brief, single-line text from the office of Admiral Thomas Ace Sterling, the commander of Naval Special Warfare Command. The message read, "Jensen, Vance is to complete training. No further interrogation on scars, previous COP. Await further instructions." Chief Jensen's eyes widened. Previous COP. COP stood for Classified Operation. This wasn't a scraped knee or a sailing accident. He looked at the new medical entry he'd just written about the scrape on her arm. He looked at the old, jagged scars on her shoulder and torso. He whispered the medical code to himself. Sierra 9. He knew what Sierra 9 meant. It was the highest level designation for an unacknowledged, politically sensitive recovery operation. He finally understood. This wasn't a Bud S recruit trying to prove herself. This was a veteran operator, already proven, who was going through the training as a formality. A few hours later, a sleek, unmarked black helicopter landed at the far end of the base. Out stepped Admiral Sterling himself, accompanied by a woman in a civilian suit, Dr. Eleanor Hayes, a high-ranking intelligence officer from the Defense Intelligence Agency, DIA. As Jensen approached them, Admiral Sterling stopped him. He leaned in close, his voice a low, heavy rumble. "Chief Jensen," the Admiral said. "The scars? You saw them?" Jensen nodded, swallowing hard. "Yes, Admiral, I saw them. I may have allowed some mockery." The Admiral looked over toward the distant, miserable silhouette of the training area, where Clara was back on the mudflats. He then uttered the 3 words that would forever silence the scorn of Class 342. Black Ops survivor. The command center was small, sterile, and isolated. Admiral Sterling, Chief Jensen, and Dr. Hayes sat around a secure table. Jensen had been told to forget everything he thought he knew about Ensign Clara Vance. Admiral Sterling began, his expression grim. Ensign Vance's appearance here is complex. Her path to Bud S was not conventional. She was never a recruit. She was an asset. He clicked a remote, and a faded satellite image projected onto the screen. A desolate, sand-swept compound in the tribal regions bordering Afghanistan and Pakistan. 2 years ago, Ensign Vance was attached to a highly specialized, unacknowledged unit, call sign Echo 7, operating directly under the DIA and Joint Special Operations Command, outside the traditional chain of command. Her official cover was a language specialist analyst. Her actual role was deep cover liaison and intelligence gathering, utilizing an unprecedented ability to blend and communicate with local networks. Dr. Hayes took over, her voice crisp and academic. Echo 7's mission was simple and catastrophic. Infiltrate a major WMD proliferation network, confirm the asset's location, and prep the target for a surgical strike. The asset was a retired Pakistani general who had gone rogue, taking highly sensitive materials with him. Ensign Vance, under the alias Aisha, spent 11 months building trust within the compound. She was indispensable. Admiral Sterling paced. Then the political situation turned. Our intelligence was compromised. The general discovered the infiltration. We had to extract Echo 7 immediately. He changed the slide to a thermal image of the compound ablaze. The extraction chopper, a Pave Hawk piloted by Major Ken Bandit Riley, was ambushed on approach. Small arms fire took out the tail rotor. It crashed a kilometer from the target. General Vance, no, Clara, was the sole survivor inside the compound. Chief Jensen leaned forward, gripping the edge of the table. How did she survive? She didn't just survive, Chief. She operated, Dr. Hayes emphasized. She was captured and interrogated for 72 hours. We have partial audio logs recovered from her encrypted comms watch. Hayes played a clip. It was static, punctuated by muffled shouts in Pashto. Then a clean, clear voice. Clara's voice, uttering a chillingly calm phrase. "If you want the code, you'll have to cut it out of me." Hayes paused the clip. She was tortured, Chief. Repeatedly. They tried to extract the kill codes for the strike, which she had memorized. They used a hot blade on her shoulder and torso, the scars you saw, to try and break her. She didn't break. Sterling interjected, his voice heavy with pride and sorrow. In a moment of distraction, Clara used a shrapnel shard she'd hidden under her tunic, likely from the Pavehawk crash, to take out her two primary captors. She then neutralized a third guard with his own rifle stock. This is where the scar on her forearm, the one she reopened today, came from. She was blocking a bayonet thrust. She fought her way out of the compound with severe internal injuries and massive blood loss, still holding the kill codes. Dr. Hayes continued. She then executed the original mission, transmitting the codes to the backup air support team, which successfully neutralized the WMD materials, preventing a regional disaster. She ran 5 miles on foot, wounded, through enemy territory, before finding the wreckage of Major Riley's bird. She secured his body and the remains of the crew's dog tags, burying them properly, before moving to the secondary extraction point. She was barely conscious when we finally picked her up. Admiral Sterling finished the briefing by slamming his hand softly on the table. Ensign Clara Vance is not a recruit. She is a decorated, combat-hardened veteran who successfully completed the most sensitive, non-permissible mission the U.S. government has conducted in a decade. Her records were completely purged and sealed with the Sierra 9 designation to protect her identity and the mission's existence. Her time at Barracks is not a test. It is a rehabilitation and a re-entry path. She's here because she insisted on completing the pipeline, Hayes explained. She believes that to lead, she must be accepted by the community. And to be accepted, she must earn the trident, the right way. We agreed on the condition that if she shows any sign of physical or psychological stress, she is immediately pulled out. Chief Jensen sat back, stunned. The mockery, the insults, they were all based on a profound, humiliating ignorance. He thought of O'Connell's sneering comments about her little sailing boat. He thought of his own snide remarks. "Admiral," Jensen whispered. "O'Connell and Allen, they've been brutal to her." Sterling looked at him with an icy glare. "Then they need to learn the lesson of their lives, Chief. They mocked a wounded warrior, a hero who saved tens of thousands of lives. The story stays here, but the respect starts now. Her path to the trident will be clean, and it will be absolute." "Understood, Admiral," Jensen said, standing at attention, a newfound, awe-filled respect radiating from his posture. "I'll ensure they finish Hell Week with her." The final 48 hours of Hell Week were a blur of cold, exhaustion, and suffering, but the dynamic within the class had subtly shifted. Chief Jensen's demeanor towards Clara had gone from scornful to rigidly deferential, an unexplained change that the other trainees noticed but couldn't place. More importantly, Ryan O'Connell and Mac Allen had changed. The sight of Clara calmly bleeding out in the Pacific while towing a drowning man had rattled them to their core. On the last day, the class was tasked with a final, grueling 12-mile run, carrying full packs, known simply as the perimeter. O'Connell, always prone to physical burnout, hit a wall at mile 9. His legs seized up, and he collapsed on the sandy trail, vomiting from exhaustion. The instructors immediately moved in, ready to pull his pin. "O'Connell, drop your gear! You're done!" Chief Jensen barked, not unkindly. As O'Connell lay there, completely defeated, a shadow fell over him. It was Clara. She had already completed the mile ahead of the pace group and was now doubling back. She didn't offer a hand. She just stood over him, her face impassive. "Get up, O'Connell," she said, her voice a barely audible rasp. O'Connell shook his head, tears of humiliation and exhaustion mixing with the dust on his face. "I can't, Vance. I'm finished." Clara knelt beside him, then did something astonishing. She unbuckled his pack, lifted it, and without a word secured it over her own. "You walk, O'Connell," she commanded, hoisting both her pack and his, a combined weight of nearly 120 pounds, onto her shoulders. The strain pulled the newly healed tissue on her shoulder taut. "You don't have to run, but you will walk across that finish line. You mocked my scars because you thought they were signs of weakness. They are my evidence. Now get up and find yours." O'Connell stared at her. Carrying 2 packs was a physical impossibility for a near hypothermic, starving recruit. But Clara stood there, rock solid, radiating a terrifying, focused strength. He dragged himself to his feet, shame and awe warring in his chest. He staggered behind her, watching the incredible sight of the woman he had belittled for weeks, now carrying his failure on her back. They crossed the finish line together, O'Connell a shivering wreck, and Clara Vance upright, silent and triumphant, the 2 heavy packs balanced perfectly. The Trident ceremony, weeks later, the moment came for the surviving members of Class 3422 to receive the coveted Seal Trident pin. The ceremony was a sober affair, held in a large hangar. Ensign Clara Vance stood shoulder to shoulder with her male classmates. O'Connell, now noticeably humble, stood a respectful distance away. McAllen was still on medical leave, having failed the final conditioning phase, but had sent a handwritten note to Clara, apologizing for his conduct. Admiral Sterling, in his full dress uniform, was presiding over the ceremony. As he approached Clara, a solemn hush fell over the room. The other graduates were pinned by their instructors or mentors. Clara was pinned by the Admiral himself. Admiral Sterling took the trident, a symbol of sea, air, and land dominance. He looked her directly in the eye, his expression a mixture of profound respect and command responsibility. He pinned the trident to her chest. As he did, he leaned in, his voice pitched just for her ear, a voice filled with years of military command and classified knowledge. "Welcome back, Aisha. You earned this twice over. The community is better for your resilience." He stepped back and addressed the room, not just the graduates, but the assembled command staff and family members. Ensign Vance is the first of her kind. She earned this badge with a level of grit and endurance that few men in this command have ever demonstrated. The next time you see a scar on an operator, I want you to look past the tissue damage and see the story of survival, of mission-first commitment, and of absolute, unflinching heroism. Then he looked straight at O'Connell, who was standing ramrod straight. Ensign Vance's scars, the Admiral stated clearly, were not earned in training. They were earned in a place that has no maps, on a mission that has no records. They are the marks of a warrior who would not break. He stepped away, leaving the entire hangar in a stunned silence. O'Connell and the remaining trainees finally understood the full, terrifying truth of the woman they had mocked. Her scars weren't a badge of weakness. They were a receipt for saving the world. Clara Vance walked out of the hangar, a fully qualified Navy SEAL. She accepted a nod of deep, silent respect from Ryan O'Connell, an acknowledgement that she was, and always had been, the superior operator. Her career did not end there. The Pentagon had found their ultimate operative, a phantom capable of operating behind any line, a woman who carried the trident and a secret history on her scarred shoulders. She was immediately reassigned to Naval Special Warfare Development Group, DevGRU, the Tier 1 command, where her specific skill set and combat experience were needed most. The legend of Ensign Vance, the Black Ops survivor, was not a story of gender breaking a barrier, but of sheer, unadulterated human willpower, proving that the only thing that matters in the darkness is who is willing to carry the weight. That is the true face of courage, not an absence of wounds, but the will to keep fighting with them. Ensign Clara Vance didn't just earn a trident. She silenced every skeptic with the truth of her sacrifice. Her story is a testament to the fact that you can't judge a book by its cover, or a warrior by their scars. If this incredible tale of drama, endurance, and classified heroism impressed you, please like this video, share the story with someone who needs inspiration, and subscribe to our channel for more true military legends.